Today, we're digging into a question you've probably never even thought to ask. Why on earth does it take 10 times longer to get a license to cut hair than it does to become an EMT and literally save someone's life? It sounds kind of nuts, right? But the answer, it pulls back the curtain on a system that's got a lot less to do with safety and a whole lot more to do with money. So right off the bat, these numbers just don't make any sense. To become a licensed cosmetologist in a lot of states, you're looking at around 1,500 hours of training. 1,500. Now, compare that to an emergency medical technician. The folks who show up and perform life-saving interventions. That's about 150 hours, a tenth of the time. So you got to ask, why is the hurdle to style hair so ridiculously higher than it is for providing trauma care? I mean, that huge gap, it just forces you to ask a really important question. If all those training hours aren't really about protecting us from a bad haircut, what are they actually for? Well, as we're about to see, it's a story about money, who gets access, and who really benefits from the system as it is. Okay, so first things first. To really get why these rules are on the books, you just have to follow the money. We're going to peel back the layers on what researchers call the institutional ecosystem. Sounds fancy, but it's basically a whole network of schools, testing companies, and government boards that, surprise, surprise, all have a financial stake in keeping things exactly the way they are. So here's how the money go-round works. It all kicks off with an aspiring student, right? Someone who wants to start a career, and they often have to take out loans to do it. That loan money goes straight to an accredited cosmetology school for tuition. But it doesn't stop there. From the school, that cash flows out to state boards for licensing fees, to private companies that run the exams, and even to publishers for the textbooks they say you have to buy. It's this perfect, closed-loop system, and it's almost entirely fueled by student debt. And we are not talking about small change here. The scale of this is just staggering. We're talking over $1 billion in federal student aid, that's taxpayer money, by the way, flowing into these schools every single year. And this access to what's called Title IV funding, that is the absolute key. Why? Because as soon as that federal money is on the table, it kind of kills the school's incentive to keep their costs low to attract students. They don't have to compete on price anymore. And here's a perfect example of how that plays out in the real world. A case study down in Dallas looked at 2 different schools offering the exact same 1,000-hour program. Just look at this difference. The school that could take federal aid, it charged over $16,000. The one that couldn't? Under $5,000. Just having access to that federal money let the first school jack up its tuition by, almost 80%? So you see the pattern here, right? Every major player in this game has a really good financial reason to keep those training hours as high as possible. The state boards, they collect more fees. The schools, they get to grab more federal aid. The testing companies, more money from exams and, retakes. And the publishers, they sell more of those essential textbooks. This is like a textbook definition of regulatory capture, where the rules that are supposed to protect you and me end up just protecting the financial interests of the industry itself. But, the crazy high cost and all those hours, that's just the first hurdle. After all that, students have to face a standardized written exam and, this is where things get really questionable, because the data shows a pretty shocking gap. And this chart, it just lays the problem bare. Check this out. This is data from California. When students take the practical, hands-on part of the exam, they pass at a rate of 82%. So clearly, they know what they're doing. They've got the skills. But then, look at the written theory exam. For English speakers, the pass rate plummets to about 55%. And for students taking that same test in Spanish, it nosedives to a shocking 24%. Come on, this isn't about a lack of skill. This is a problem with the exam itself. Okay, so there's actually a technical term for this, and experts call it differential item functioning, or DIF. It's basically a fancy way of saying a test question is secretly biased. It might use really complex language or cultural references that have absolutely nothing to do with cosmetology. And the result is that people who are equally skilled end up failing just because of their linguistic or cultural background. So the test isn't really measuring how good you are at cosmetology, it's measuring your English skills. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't some fringe theory. A formal review by California's own cosmetology board confirmed it. They found that it didn't matter which school a Spanish-speaking student went to, their failure rate on that written exam was consistently around 82%. The problem wasn't the schools. It was baked right into the test. So what does all of this actually mean for the people trying to build a career? Well, this whole system, the high hours, the biased exams, It creates this just devastating cycle of high costs and really low returns. It ends up trapping so many aspiring professionals in a mountain of debt. And here it is, the core economic trap for every single student. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research is super clear on this. Making students complete more training hours, well, it directly leads to more student debt. But here's the kicker. It does not lead to higher pay once they actually get a job. They are literally paying more for a credential that has zero added value in the job market. And if you need one number to sum it all up, here it is, 98%. A 2022 report found that nearly all cosmetology programs that get federal funding would fail the government's own gainful employment test. And that test asks a really simple question. Do the people who graduate earn enough to actually pay back their loans? For this industry, the answer is a massive, overwhelming no. So let's just bring this all back to where we started. A cosmetologist has to go through 1,500 hours of training to earn a median salary of about $35,000. An EMT, just 150 hours, and they earn around $40,000. A nursing assistant with only 90 hours of training makes nearly $38,000. It's completely upside down. Students are training longer and going deeper into debt, all to earn less money than people in these high-stakes medical fields. Okay, so it's pretty clear the system is broken, but here's the good news. The research also points to a really clear path forward. There are ways to build a smarter, fairer system that still protects the public, but doesn't throw up these impossible barriers for people who just want to work. And we know that these reforms actually work because we've seen them in action. States like California and Texas, they've already cut their requirements down to a much more reasonable 1,000 hours. And the results? The number of students who actually finished their programs more than doubled. And this was especially true for Hispanic and Latino students. And, really importantly, there was no documented increase in anyone getting hurt, no harm to consumers. So the evidence points to a few key common sense reforms. First, just reduce the hours to that 1,000-hour model. It works. Then create tiered licenses for services that don't even use chemicals, like hair braiding. Expand paid apprenticeships so people have a debt-free way to learn. Mandate audits, maybe even using AI to get that bias out of the exams. And finally, let experienced workers test out of requirements they've already mastered. And all of this leaves us with one last big question. When you have a system that demands 10 times more training to style hair than to save a life, a system that saddles students with debt they can't possibly repay, and uses biased tests to keep skilled people out, you just have to ask, is this system really about public safety anymore, or has it become a machine built for private profit?